Right. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here with you today, and I can't wait to talk to you about our journey from lean to an end-to-end customer experience. So, just for a little bit of history, so you can kind of know where we're coming from, and where we're going. We started lean in Washington in 2011 with our lean launch. We focused on operational efficiency and waste reduction. We saw some early wins with faster processes and clearer workflows. So in 2013, we became Results Washington. And if you've heard of us before, you've probably heard of us with that name. Here we started focusing on enterprise-wide performance and shifting to a system level improvements. We spent 12 years doing that. And then last year in 2025, we have evolved into your Washington with a focus on improving customer experience in government with a core outcome of trying to build trust with our citizens in government. So this really shows you that we're using our lean foundation as a building block moving forward. We're not getting rid of it. We see it as something very important in our history and giving us a leg up as we evolve forward. So what does it mean to have a comprehensive customer experience? We define a comprehensive customer experience as containing three main components: the emotional, the social, and the functional. The emotional is really around customers' experience, their personal and emotional experience going through a government process to obtain a government service. It really kind of answers the question that customers might have of, am I doing this right? And how they feel as they move through. Do they feel fear and frustration, or do they feel ease and an ability to feel like they're going to be successful and hopeful and optimistic? The social is really about understanding people in the context that they're coming to us with. So are they coming to us as a parent, as a student, as a professional, seeing them in their role as who they are and not just as a case or a client? And this really asks the question that they really ask the question, like, do you see me as capable? People want to be seen as capable as they move as they move through our processes. They want to feel like they don't want to feel judgment. They don't want to experience bias. And they want people to understand the importance of what they're doing in the context of their social needs. And the functional is really about that quality, that efficiency, that effectiveness. It answers, can I get this done easily? Is it right when I get it? So the functional is really where lean lives. Lean lives and thrives in the functional. And yes, lean also takes into consideration the voice of the customer, but it doesn't necessarily take into consideration the emotional and social needs of the customer as they experience the service. And that's where we are really defining the difference between lean and an end-to-end comprehensive customer experience. So I love this quote: customers are happy that we are proficient at what we do, but they expect that we should master the emotional and social as well. Customers come to us with an expectation that they're going to be treated with empathy, that they're going to be treated humanely, that they're not going to be judged, that the process is going to be clear and easy to go through. So whether or not we deliver on that, this is what their expectation is. So let's take an example of, say, a restaurant experience, a dine-in restaurant experience. As a customer of that restaurant, you are happy that the food comes out hot and tasting good and maybe with speed. but you expect that that whole experience from the moment you walk through the door to the moment you pay your bill and leave is something that meets your emotional and social needs as well. You walk in, you expect to be greeted by the host or hostess in a welcoming way. You expect that they're going to want you there as a patron. You don't want to be looked down upon because of how you might be dressed or the fact that you might have 3 kids in tow. You want them to welcome you into their establishment. You expect that they will. And when you're seated, you expect that the server is going to attend to your needs and be professional and be polite. You expect them to make sure that your order is correct and that they come by with extra napkins when you need them, right? So you don't want to see them spending all their time on the table next to you because they think they might get a bigger tip there. So you expect this experience, and that food is a part of that experience, but it's definitely not the whole experience. And that's what we mean by a comprehensive experience. It meets the emotional, the social, and the functional needs. So let's take a look at an example of what we call service magic. So service magic is when you get your emotional, your social, and your functional needs met. The emotional is you want to be connected with as a human, not as a user, a case, or a client. The social is about wanting to be successful in your role as a professional, as a parent, as a student. The functional service magic really comes when those traditional or status quo ways of operating are suspended or altered. And I don't mean going against policy and procedure. I mean really just understanding the needs and making sure that those needs get met. So we're going to watch now an example of service magic from that involves an employee with our Department of Corrections and the person that she was working with.
Sometimes we think of the state as this huge bureaucracy that cares very little about people. Well, there are other times too, where you just have 2 mothers trying to do the right thing.
The Department of Corrections can review an individual based on some criterias and transition them out of prison up to 12 months early.
That's what happened to Tiffany Torres. DOC placed her under strict home supervision so she could be a better
I'm a better parent to my children.
Sometimes we think of the state as this huge bureaucracy that cares very little about people. Well, there are other times too, where you just have 2 mothers trying to do the right thing.
The Department of Corrections can review an individual based on some criterias and transition them out of prison up to 12 months early.
That's what happened to Tiffany Torres. DOC placed her under strict home supervision so she could be a better parent to her 3 girls, the oldest being Savannah.
This program's helped me tremendously. I've done parenting classes, so I feel that I'm a better parent to my children. I've got 1 credit left to complete my high school diploma that I didn't ever think I'd be able to do. I thought that I was going to have to spend my whole 2 years there without my kids having me.
Tiffany called me and mentioned that Savannah had went to the hospital earlier, and her doctor had called her and told her she needed to get back to the emergency room right away. And so she asked for permission to go, and of course I was like, absolutely.
We took her in to get blood tests, and they said they diagnosed her with the B-cell lymphoblastic leukemia. I just stared at the doctor like, you're crazy, you're lying to me. Me and Savannah, we've always watched like the St. Jude's commercials, and always said, look at those poor little kids. But now we're at the point that is my kid.
It was devastating news. Making matters worse, under the program's supervision rules, Tiffany was to return home immediately, leaving Savannah to face the night alone.
It literally broke my heart. I'm a mom, and I couldn't even fathom something like that happening with one of my children. And so my heart went out to her, and whatever I could do to make it better, I was willing to do.
So I'm not going nowhere. You're going to have to come and get me with handcuffs before I leave this hospital. I'm not leaving my child here.
I knew that I had to make a decision on what was next, but if it was me and my child, there's no way nobody could have told me not to stay there with my kid. And so I wouldn't dare tell her.
Katrina took herself out of DOC's position and put herself in a mom position and said, I don't really know what to do, but me being a mom, I'm not going to tell you you have to leave. I will come up personally and come see you to make sure that you could stay with your child. And that's what she did.
Would you do it again?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Savannah is continuing her treatment. Tiffany and Officer Avon, their relationship still goes on, and it will. And we'll keep you updated. Remember, it's not state government's Washington, it's your Washington. And I'm Jesse Jones.
We love our director, Jesse Jones. He's a very engaging personality. So I'd like to debrief this video with you. Where did you see Tiffany's emotional and social needs being met? Go ahead and pop some stuff into the chat for me. Where were her emotional and social needs being met by the DOC worker, Katrina?
She saw her as a mother and not just an inmate.
Absolutely. She really stepped into her shoes and thought about, what if this was her child? Exactly. Feeling heard and met in the situation she was facing, she felt heard, allowing her to stay with her daughter, recognized as a mom and not a number, not just a formerly incarcerated person going through this program, but as a mom. Where did you see the functional and status quo ways of operating being suspended or altered? Feel free to come off mute or pop in the chat.
I can add that I was surprised. I was touched by the way the woman was saying, if that were my daughter, which is kind of like an empathy thing, but that's like you're seeing a public servant kind of putting themselves in the shoes of the person they're serving. I thought that was quite powerful, and that's sort of against the status quo. The status quo is just like keep pushing the paper and rubber stamping things and follow the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, she was allowed to stay with her daughter. Like, the status quo that was altered was that Katrina went and stayed in the hospital with her, right? And she found a way to flex that policy to meet Tiffany's needs humanely. Certainly that policy or that program that they developed, nobody sat there thinking, okay, well, what happens if a kid gets diagnosed with a really serious disease and has to be in the hospital overnight? What are we going to do that? Like, that didn't make it into thinking around the policy and the program that she was involved in. And so Katrina really had to think outside of the box and create that service magic by coming up with a way to meet Tiffany's needs. And you foreshadowed our next slide beautifully. Empathy is the keystone mindset that really allowed Katrina to serve Tiffany's needs. So, hang on. Okay, so empathy really allows you to see the person, not just the case. It creates trust in critical moments. It allows systems to flex humanely, and it turns policy into service. It is empathy that Katrina had that really allowed her to build that service magic and to create that customer experience that met Tiffany's emotional, social, and functional needs. But empathy isn't without its challenges, right? Empathy can be really hard in government and really hard to do with the resources that we're allowed and allotted. Empathy isn't what's measured. I don't know about you, but I've never had a performance evaluation that talked about my empathy. I have had performance evaluations that talked about how much work I did and how well I did my work. Empathy requires time. And when in government services, when we're always being asked to do more with less, that time is precious. And we're often measured by how many actions we get done and how much time we spent on phone calls. We're not measured by the empathy that we delivered. Empathy asks us to challenge assumptions, and challenging your own assumptions is really hard. Changing your mind about what you think the problem is, or allowing yourself to be changed by the customer that you're serving, not always easy. Empathy asks us to turn insight into action, and we're not always ready for that action. Your Washington has had some amazing mentors along our journey over this past year. And one of those mentors gave us some sage advice in saying, if you're not ready to take action, then don't ask for the feedback. We can't just keep asking for feedback and not doing anything with it. But sometimes when we ask for feedback, we don't always get what we expected. And then taking action can become a challenge. Empathy asks us to shift our priorities, sometimes our strategic priorities. And that can be a lot like trying to turn the Titanic. Shifting priorities in a large organization is not easy. And empathy often requires us to unlearn what we thought we knew. Empathy gives us insight that can change what we thought we knew. And that is an uncomfortable place to be. So, which of these empathy challenges do you think is hardest for you in your context, in your situation, in your organization? Go ahead and come off mute or pop it in the chat. Time. Not what's measured. They're not what is measured. Turning insight into action requires unlearning.
I think
I'll
it's the
jump in if
shifting
that's okay.
priorities.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can. So many years ago, I was working on service transformation at Employment Social Development Services Canada. And we had an initiative that was going to impact a very small group of people comparatively to what a lot of government initiatives impact. But the impact on that group of people was enormous. Like our director at the time said, like, it's the difference between having their lights on and not, right? Like it was making sure government money was getting into the hands of people who really needed it most, but they were a tricky population to keep tabs on. So weren't always collecting the benefits that were available to them. And we tend to focus in government on big splashy things. Lots of impact, lots of people, but I'm a change manager and we measure impact. Like you can have a small change that impacts a whole bunch of people. And you can have a change that impacts just a few people, but the impact on them is huge. And actually, if you do a change analysis, those two changes might be fairly comparable. So I think if we're working towards being a more empathetic organization, we have to be willing to do the small or big impact for small group changes that don't necessarily get the big splashy news stories or the big attention or the big data rewards because they're worth doing. So it's like kind of try to focus on, focus on things that are worth doing because they're the right thing to do, not necessarily because they're going to get a lot of applause.
Right. And I think it also is having your sights on the end game. If you want to build trust in government, you have to make government more human. And you have to work on those. Trust is built interaction by interaction by interaction. It's not built necessarily in these big changes that we roll out. And so I think it's also really understanding what you're working towards and what outcome that you're seeking, that can really help you realize that these one-on-one interactions with folks are really where that trust is built and where that magic happens and where change takes place. Absolutely.
Can you build on that and let us know whether there was systemic changes that came as a result of that interaction? Like, did anybody look at the policy and say we need to adjust this because other people might be in this situation?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. That's something that I think I will look into so that I can answer people's questions about that later. But yeah, I'm sorry, I really don't know if they took that any farther and went back and took a look at the policy. But that would be a best case scenario, wouldn't it? Is if we can go back and take like, okay, we tried this out on the ground and this is what we're finding. And so for this policy to really work as intended, as the people who built that program really they really want to see their vision, we have to allow that PDCA, right? And come back and really say, okay, what adjustments do we need to make so this really works as intended moving forward?
That's where the small impact becomes the big impact, right? Is like one person sort of prompts like a bigger policy change or systemic change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we know empathy is hard. So let's take a look at one way, using one tool, we can work to build empathy that is fairly easy to do and a fairly easy tool to use. And so I'm going to introduce you to the empathy map. The empathy map is a simple tool that you can use to build empathy for the people that you're serving, whether they're internal or whether they're external. So we're going to build this empathy map together. And the construct is building trust in government. And so we want our customers to have trust in government and trust in the programs, services, and products that we deliver. And I'm asking you to think about that end customer, that citizen who's using your services. And if that feels like a stretch, just think of yourself, because we're all customers of government. We all need a driver's license, right? So whether you're putting yourself in the shoes as a customer of government, or whether you feel particularly connected to the customers that your organization works with, either one is fine. And what we're going to be looking at is, if we want to build trust in government, we need to understand right now what people are going through. So what do your customers or yourself see in environmental trends, in watching things, in reading things, in the media you're consuming? What do you see that either helps build trust in government or is taking away from trust in government? Go ahead, come off mute, or pop into the chat. What are customers seeing that either helps build or take away their trust in government?
I'm just going to hop on.
Service experience. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to hop on because I work in public health, and some of what they're seeing in the United States, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in the United States right now, there's a lot of conflicting information and opinions that are going out from the federal government and the state government. Depending on what state you live in, those may be more or less aligned. And that, especially after COVID, when in some cases faith in public health has been shaken a little bit, it is either adding No, I think it's probably in all cases adding a little bit to the lack of faith in public health because the messaging consistency is so stark right now.
Yeah, messaging inconsistency is a huge one. Inconsistent service experiences. I got this service one time and I got a different service another time. Opaque processes is really definitely a good one. Um, Hard to access a human being. It is. It's getting harder and harder. And for some people, that's really necessary. They might not be digitally literate or have access to the digital services they need, or they might just not understand things and need to talk it out with someone. These are great when it comes to what they're seeing. And big point made in terms of what you might be seeing, the differences between national, city, state governments. So, what are people hearing? What are they hearing from their family, their friends, their influencers, TikTok? What are they hearing from the people around them that is either building their trust in government or taking away from their trust in government? People's opinions are shaped a lot by what they're hearing. We have misinformation getting propped up and shared through unreliable sources. Yeah. So it's hard to build trust when you don't know what's true. Government decisions are being announced and defended before the problem is defined or discussed. I love that. That speaks to my lean heart so much. What problem are we actually solving here? Absolutely. Anything else that you think people are hearing? Family, friends, influencers? To keep from crying. Yeah. All right. We'll go ahead and we'll move on. So, based on what they're seeing and what they're hearing, what do you think people are thinking and feeling when it comes to trust in government? What are their motivators? What are their concerns? What are their emotions? Go ahead and pop in the chat. Come off mute. Not really being heard, especially if they belong to a minority group. Distrust, fear, frustration, anger. Yeah. They're not seeing government as a reliable partner or actively working, or the government is actively working to obstruct them. Yes. Constantly questioning best use of taxpayer dollars. Yes. That's fatiguing. All right. So now let's move on to what they say and do. How does this impact their behavior, their attitudes, and their expressions? How are they showing up now based on what they're seeing, hearing, thinking, and feeling? Arguing and fighting. We have reduced engagement. Showing up at service counters already frustrated and spoiling for a fight. Yes, absolutely. Showing up with the expectation that it's not going to go well. Shields up. Absolutely. Yeah, it's true that even when you have a good or positive customer experience, it can be overshadowed by previous bad experiences. Absolutely. So when we look at these four quadrants, where do you see kind of overall pains, fears, frustrations, and anxieties? Is there anything that you could kind of summarize from these pains? Okay, so these are really like when you look at those 4 quadrants, is there anything that kind of sticks out as a common denominator in terms of what the overarching fears, frustrations, and anxieties are? Fear they won't understand how to fix their issue, distrust, negativity, great, great. And what are their gains? What do you see as them, as their wants and their needs and their goals? What are they hopeful for?
I just want to be able to make the right decision on the first try.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to be heard. Absolutely. Speed and agility, transparency. These are all great. And so I want to let you know that the empathy map has been one of the tools that I have gone back to over and over. It's one of my favorite tools to use because I've seen it really every time I've used it. It's been so insightful and so helpful. I used it once with a project team. We were coming up with a solution and we were going to need our staff to do something different. And we really wanted to make sure that when we messaged what we were asking them to do, that it didn't come across as tone deaf and insensitive to what they were going through. So we did an empathy map for our staff, and it really helped us message what we needed them to do in a with much more empathy with much more understanding of what they were going through. And that really helped with the change. In your Washington, we've used this before we sent out a really big communication regarding our new executive order and what we were going to be doing. We did an empathy map on our agency leaders. And we really put ourselves in our agency leaders' shoes at a time in Washington where we were experiencing really challenging budget, like probably the most challenging budget we've ever had to go through. And agency leaders were losing staff and people were being laid off, and it was really hard. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't coming out and saying, oh, in addition to all this really crappy stuff you're going through, we now need you to do all this extra work. Like, we really had to message that in a way that didn't shut everybody down. An empathy map can also be used in the converse. You could use this to create a vision of what you want the future to be. What do you want people to be seeing? What do you want people to be hearing? So you can also use it in the opposite way. So I hope you find use for this empathy map. It's quick, it's easy, it kind of makes that time problem a little less. So I just want to do a time check. Ken, how much more time do I have?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to skip the next 3 slides, unfortunately, but I hope that you can go back and watch this reflection series link and interview that we kind of ran out of time to do. But this reflection series was between one of your Washington's own senior performance advisors, Talia Mazzara, and Dr. Rain Correa from our women's incarceration facility in Washington. What is really a great example about this is that it shows how empathy was used in a real world, real life project. And it shows, and this project didn't go into this intending to be a customer experience project, but it shows how empathy really made it become one. Even though they went in with a lot more of a lean lens, they really used empathy to transform the experience for both women who were in need of trauma treatment and for the corrections staff. And they both improved trauma treatment and trauma outcomes for incarcerated women and improved staff engagement and staff retention for their staff, all by really focusing on empathy. So I encourage you to go back. The link is there. Take a look at this example. It really kind of gives you a boots on the ground, like in the thick of it. These are all the challenges that we had. It recognizes some of the same challenges that you probably have and really shows you how they move forward. So I'm sorry we don't have time to get to it today, but I do want to move into your Washington's website and show you a little bit about our toolkit. Okay. All right. So Narissa, if you would pull up our Your Washington toolkit. So your.wa.gov is our web link and everybody can access it. And if you go to your customer experience tab right there in the middle, then you go to CX tools, templates, and resources. This will take you to our online toolkit to help you build more customer experience into your projects and into how you're serving your citizens. So Lean has the DMAIC, the define, measure, analyze, improve, control. It's a framework that helps you move through Lean in a very mindful way, make sure you don't miss steps and that you're really looking at all of the stuff. And human-centered design, which is how you kind of get at that emotional and social aspects of customer experience, also has a framework that helps move you through so that you don't miss anything big. There are actually several human-centered design frameworks out there. Washington is using this 4D framework, which is discover, define. I want to move down a little bit. Define, develop, and deliver. And in each of these phases, we have at least 8 tools linked. And what you're going to notice is a lot of crossover with Lean tools. You're going to see a lot of familiar tools in here, but you're also going to see some tools that really help pull out that emotional and social piece of the customer experience. So Narissa, if you would go back up to the Discover. So here in Discover, we have the empathy mapping that we just went over, and we have a few other exercises you can use to really understand your customer. And then we have the research and observation. I'm going to point out the customer journey map there. That's a really good way. What that is different from like a value stream map or process map is that it really maps the emotions of the customer as they go through your process and defines the pain points from their perspective. So I want to show you kind of what it looks like when you go in. If you would choose personas, Narissa, when you get into any one of these tools, you're going to see a little bit of an overview about that tool. And that's really meant to help you decide, is this the right tool for me in this project now? So if you scroll down, we've got best practices, basic steps, and benefits. And then if you decide you want to use that tool, you can click into these things here below if you want step-by-step instructions. So if you would open that up, you can see that we have a video, a presentation, and a handout linked. If you want to try it yourself, if you want to click into that, you can see that we have a persona template. And again, any template that is your Washington branded, you can pull down, you can use, rebrand, change the names to protect the innocent. They're all up for grabs. And then down below in our additional resources section, we've linked to a lot of other like players and names in the business. We've got 18F, NNG, and we've got some mural and mural links. Actually, if you want to do that online collaboration tool, Narissa, if you want to open that up, we have Miro and Mural, both linked for as many tools as possible in terms of what templates and guides they are. So we try to put a lot of information in here in an adjustable way to help you decide if you want to use the tool, to give you some help in using the tool, and to give you some additional resources if you want to dig in a little further. All right, so what I've really tried to communicate in this presentation is that a comprehensive customer service experience has three components: emotional, social, and functional. Lean lives in the functional. Human-centered design lives in the emotional and the social. Empathy is the bridge. Empathy is the bridge to really doing human-centered design. And if there's one thing that we do as the only thing, empathy is that thing. It's the mindset of empathy that's really going to bridge us into the next evolution. And we can try other tools and human-centered design things like customer journey mapping and all of that, but empathy is that bridge that's going to get us there.